Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm so happy to see you in person after watching you in this extraordinary role on the small screen.
Thank you.
Aminata, what was what? I mean, that seems like the dream role for an actress.
It was a dream role for me. I have so many, and this was, when it happened, I never thought in a million years they would let me be a part of this in any sort of way. And I was asking them, I said, I don't care what you give me, just give me something. I don't care.
You just wanted to be part of
I
this
just wanted to be
project.
a part of it. I would work microphones if they needed it.
How did you come to know the story and the project? Because the Book of Negroes is a huge success as a book in Canada, perhaps less so in the United States. How did you come to know that story?
I didn't. I didn't know anything about it. I was woefully unaware of the book in America, and through the audition process, I came to know about it, and I started the book, and I couldn't put it down. I read all the episodes, all six, and then I wanted to read the book because when I auditioned, I wanted to make sure that I had as much texture as I could when I said those lines. And I'm an avid reader. I love reading, and I know what happens between an adaptation and this original source material. And sometimes a lot of things get lost.
And how did you
And
find this?
I thought it'd stay true. In terms of like plot, I mean, we do other things, but in terms of being true to what I think are brilliant pieces from the novel, and Lawrence is a very visual writer, and I think the series does is a very visual telling of it as well. Clement Virgo, who is our director, is a visual director, and for me, if you're going to take a book because I love books so much. I hold them as sacred cows. If you're going to do that, there has to be a reason. And I think the reason to put something on screen is to put the visual angle to it. And I think that's what Clement strived to do. And I believe that he was successful in doing that.
Well, let's talk about the role that you say was such a dream role for you, because it's extraordinary in so many ways. For people who aren't familiar with the book and haven't seen the rest of the series yet, describe a little bit. I mean, Aminata ages a lot. You cover a lot of ground and a lot of her of a life in this story. What was it like to do all that?
Well, in terms of the aging process, I felt that Aminata is a woman who just has this how would I describe it? There are people I feel who are what they are when they're 20. They are that same way when they're 72 or 80 in the best way because youth to them is not about age. What is exciting about youth is not about age. And what I think is exciting about youth is curiosity and a real engagement with the world. I see my little 2-year-old niece, and my mother is always put that down, la da 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 da, don't mess with that, da da da, because we're always on suicide watch with her, right? But I say to her, I said, mommy, I'm talking about to my mother. Mommy, imagine what it would be like if you had just seen a microphone for the first time. You just saw a chair for the first time. And that's what's so remarkable and wonderful about being a child. And I felt that Aminata has that from the time she is a child until she's much, much older, a real appreciation and curiosity about the world, as storytellers must have. And that is what she is essentially. She is a storyteller. So that was a through line. That was her bloodline throughout her. It is her bloodline throughout her life. And what what drove this woman profoundly was a desire for love, and a desire, and not even a desire for it. No one needed to emancipate this woman. No one needed to do that. She had that emancipation for herself.
Which was so remarkable for the
Yes.
context.
Right, exactly, exactly. I talk a lot about women who would be sort of her literary heroine contemporary, someone like Madame Bovary or Anna Karenina. These women, they made tragic choices because the world made choices for them. But Aminata was an enslaved woman, and she made choices for herself. She says one of the most profound things I think she says in the entire series is she says to her husband Shakura, "I married the man I loved." And for a woman to say that in the 18th century, period, no matter whether you're an enslaved person or a rich patrician woman, for someone to say it's something like that is a revolutionary. It's a feminist ideal, and I just sort of like let myself be guided by all these things that I felt were guiding principles for her throughout her life.
I have to ask how I think unlike any film I've ever seen, any presentation of a character that ages throughout the story, you aged. You really aged without, I didn't feel like it was makeup and hairspray. Like, it wasn't about adding gray to your hair. You aged, and I'm so curious what you tapped into as an actor to show the accumulation of experience in a life.
I think that's what it is, accumulation of experience. Um, you cannot go through what this woman went through in her life, losing her children, losing the man she loved, and it not do something, it not sort of etch your soul in some sort of way. Not expand, not contract it, but sort of shape it. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think that shapes the body. Do you know what I mean? It shapes the body, it shapes movement, it shapes just how you are, how you talk, those kinds of things. And I think there's a fatigue a little bit that happens, still an openness, but a little fatigue
You
that,
portrayed that
yeah.
extraordinarily convincingly. It was one of the things that struck me the most about your work in this role. A lot of people will know you from your role in the film The Help.
Hmm.
That's perhaps the one that you're best known for. It's a small but very pivotal role of Eula May Davis, the maid in that film who's arrested for stealing a ring. Do you
Hmm.
see any commonalities between that role and the role of Aminata?
No one has ever asked me that question before.
Pause for thought.
Yeah, pause for thought.
I mean, they're both subjected to extraordinarily dehumanizing treatments. In Aminata's case, slave owners, obviously, Eula May at the hands of her employer in the American legal system.
I think I never define the characters I play. I hope this doesn't sound presumptuous or anything like that, but I never define characters that I played by their circumstances. And even though both of them were in dehumanizing situations, that's not the sum total of who they are. What I would say, interestingly, and thank you so much for asking that, is that what you don't see in the film of The Help, but you see in the book, is that Aminata wanted desperately for her children to be educated. And so in the novel, Catherine Stockett talks about that and that need for them to be educated.
Mhm.
And I
The
think
Eula
that,
May Davis
yeah,
character.
you'll yeah.
Mhm.
And I think if there's a through line, I think that's what it is. Aminata was an educated young girl. Her father was teaching her how to read, and her being a literate person sort of changed her circumstances. And Yomei wanted these things for her children because she didn't have them for herself. She wanted that, but she couldn't do it, and she wanted that so badly for her children. Both of them recognizing the power of education, but also liberation at the same time, because you have to have both. You can't just be educated, because you can be an educated fool.
Hmm.
You know.
How important is that kind of um, set of or sense of values and goals when you look at a character that you hope to play, a role you want to take?
Hmm.
Is that part of what you're always looking for? I mean, how important is it to you to to play these kinds of characters?
If I could, it's all I would do. It's all I would do. I feel this author writer said, so I think it was Susan Sontag, who said that if the day that I'm just a writer, I need to stop writing, and I feel that way about acting in a weird way. You can't always do these kinds of roles because they don't always come your way. But I would, if I could, I would. That's all I would do.
To
That's
that
it.
point, let me ask you about this. The film
Hmm.
critic Kia Makarechi had an interesting piece last year around the time there was so much Oscar buzz for 12 Years a Slave, Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom, The Butler, Fruitvale Station. And
Hmm.
in this article, he pointed out that Black actors are typically only recognized when they play roles that literally could not have gone to a white actor. No white actor was ever going to be cast as Nelson Mandela. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And you've said that you often gravitate toward period pieces. Is
Hmm.
that because that's where there are good roles for Black actors?
Well, I gravitate towards these roles because I want to be instrumental in a correction that I think needs to happen in world history, particularly African Canadian history. Now that I know about this history that happened here as well, um, and I think that there's a willful uh, desire on the part of supremacists. Let's just call them that, who want to subdue certain parts of our history because it serves them. And so many stories, particularly stories about women, particularly stories about people of color, of not just African Americans, Japanese Americans. All of us have participated in this experience of creating both these cultures, and for me, I want to participate in that correction. People get educated a lot of times now, more so visually than they do through books. And so I feel like I'm participating in that. But
You're
it's
a
not
jelly.
just I am a jelly. I
That's
hope to.
something Aminata says
Yes.
in the Book of Negroes. She talks about her role. She's known since she was a child that she was a storyteller. So
Yeah.
that's is that do you think that's been your role since forever
I
too?
you know, have been lucky enough to play parts where that of based on characters that have actually lived, and then playing parts like something like Aminata, who is a fictional character, but she's an amalgam of all these people who had these experiences. And I would love to do that, but I also feel like, and I'm glad that you brought that up. I had never read that. I mean, I would love to play roles that no one would ever think of casting an African American or a woman of color playing. I mean, there's my dream is to play do the role that Olivia de Havilland did in the Heiress, and there's no reason why I couldn't do that.
So
So,
you still feel a bit limited in your
oh,
options.
I feel more than a bit limited, and it's all right. And I don't think that's a complaint. I don't think that's a grievance. That just is how it is, and you just have to work towards making it different.
Lou Gossett Jr. was on Q recently saying that he thought that things were changing in that regard quite rapidly, both in front of the camera and behind it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that remains to be seen, because I feel that particularly for roles for women particularly, when I look, I'm a big fan of old movies. Big fan of old movies. And I look at the breadth of characters that someone like Betty Davis and Barbara Stanwyck and these women got to play through the course of their lives, through the course of their professional career, and the kinds of characters they got to play. They were all these wonderful heroines, and Jean Arthur and Margaret Sullivan. I mean, I could go on and on and on, and they had role after Greer Garson was another one who just played role after role after role after role, where they were the heroines of these really exciting stories. But now we have that's conscripted, and it's not like that anymore. It's just not like that anymore. And a lot of times women, unfortunately, are the voice, the instrument, the side of the male experience. And I want to see something better than that. I think the world wants to see something better than that, and I think they would eat it up if they were offered it.
Do you think that and I realize you're not complaining about the great roles that you have been able to play thus far,
Hmm.
certainly including a leading role in a critically acclaimed series, Book of Negroes.
Absolutely.
Do you think that's going to help open doors for you? I mean, is that going to change things? I know it's early to say, but
Yeah,
what do
it's
you
early to
think?
say. It's early to say. I would love to, do more. I'd love to do more for all kinds of reasons. I have a family who relies on me for Christmas. So, for that reason, and I love doing when I'm doing the kinds of things that I believe in, and I really believed in Book of Negroes. Outside of my participation in it, I believed in the story. I believe in the story. I think Lawrence Hill wrote one of the best books I've ever read. And so outside of my participation in it, I believe in the story. So I would love to do more stories that I can like. It's You asked me, was I tired? The idea of coming here, and I love your show, and talking about something that I also liked. I mean, we could just have pie now. You know what I mean?
Your
It's a
passion
joy.
for this role and for the book was evident, certainly in the way you portrayed that extraordinary character, and also in the way you talk and share about the experience of being part of it. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.